Chloe, the story I'm about to tell you is a record of a boy who vanished like the wind in Busan 40 years ago. And it's also the story of the massive fortress that swallowed him whole. Busan, 1982. A 12-year-old boy named Park Jae-young, alias, was a son more devoted than any other. He was the sole pride of his father, a humble pushcart peddler in the market. Though he lost his mother early, he was mature enough to care for her during her illness, even at a young age, and smart enough to always be first or second in his class. One day, an older boy from the neighborhood made a tempting offer. Jae-young, I have to go meet my aunt at Busan Station. Want to come with? We can play around at the arcade. Busan Station. To a child's eyes, it was another world. Flashing lights, bustling crowds. As he waited for the older boy's aunt in front of the station, large men suddenly approached and grabbed him by the shoulder. You two are vagrants, aren't you? You need to come with us to the police station for a minute. Jae-young, with no idea what was happening, resisted, but the man's grip was impossibly strong. Just like that, he was forced into a gray van he'd never seen before. The van started to move, and the familiar sights of Busan Station faded away outside the window. It was the last glimpse of the world Jae-young would see. After a while, he was thrown out of the van like a piece of luggage in front of a giant, endless wall. A fence over 5 meters tall was topped with barbed wire, with guard posts stationed every 10 meters. This wasn't a police station. It was a massive fortress. As soon as he was dragged inside, his hair was unceremoniously shaved off. His clothes were stripped from him, and an ill-fitting blue tracksuit was thrown at him. And instead of a name, he was given a number and a platoon. Starting today, you are in the 24th platoon. That place was a massive forced labor factory. 12-year-old Jae-young was assigned to the fish hook assembly plant. All day long, without a moment to straighten his back, he had to assemble sharp hooks. If you didn't meet your quota, guards with wooden bats would rush in and rain down merciless beatings. It didn't matter if your flesh was torn or if a needle pierced under your fingernail and drew blood. You couldn't stop. A scream would only invite more violence. The children there all knew it. You couldn't leave this place alive. And so, 2 hellish years passed. The word hope became like the taste of rusty metal in the food, something you could neither swallow nor spit out. On that day, too, I was standing in a long line of blue tracksuits in front of the mess hall. My mind was empty, my ears filled with the clanging of trays and the shouts of the guards. But then I saw it. Near the serving counter up ahead, a familiar silhouette. The stooped shoulders, the head hung low towards the ground. No, it couldn't be. I must have been mistaken. My father had to be in the outside world. He had to be looking for me. I shook my head and tried to look away. False hope was the cruelest form of torture in this place. But as the line shortened and the figure grew closer, my heart began to pound uncontrollably. The gaunt back, the bony nape of his neck, and finally, the moment he lifted his head and looked to the side, I couldn't breathe. It was him. It was my father. The father I had dreamed of, my one and only hope. But he wasn't the man I remembered. His cheeks were hollowed out and dark, his eyes sunken and vacant, and he was wearing the same blue tracksuit as me. In that moment, I understood. He hadn't come to save me. He had gone to the police station to find his son, only to be accused of being a vagrant for not properly looking after his child, and was dragged here just like me. My savior had appeared as just another prisoner of hell. We looked at each other, but we couldn't say a single word. The guard's eyes were gleaming. The moment my father saw me, his eyes wavered with despair, but he quickly erased all emotion and turned away. He knew instinctively that if we acknowledged each other, neither of us would be safe. In that brief moment, our eyes conveyed a world of tragedy. A few days later, as we were crossing paths on the way to the workyard, my father brushed past me and pressed something firmly into my hand. It was just for a second, avoiding the eyes of the guards. When I opened my hand, there it was, a slightly crushed choco pie, the kind they gave out only one per person on holidays, a treasure more precious than gold in this place. My father, not knowing when he might see his son, had hidden it in his clothes for days. The warmth from his rough, cold hand. That night, I cried silently under my blanket. It wasn't just a snack. It was my father's heart, a love for his son that he refused to give up even in this hell. What was the true identity of this massive fortress? The truth, revealed years later, was even more shocking. This place was the brothers' home, an official welfare institution supported by the government. Ahead of the 1988 Olympics, the government issued a directive to clean up the streets. To boost their records, police indiscriminately rounded up anyone on the street, children, students, office workers, and labeled them as vagrants. The brothers' home received huge sums of money from the state in exchange for imprisoning them. It was a giant concentration camp, a kingdom sanctioned by the state, disguised as a welfare facility. Over 12 years, more than 500 deaths were officially confirmed. The gates of that hell were pried open by the tenacity of a brave prosecutor. But the director, Oh Se-chol, alias, was found not guilty of illegal confinement, claiming he was only following government orders. His final punishment was a mere 2.5 years in prison for embezzlement. After his release, he continued to run welfare facilities under different names, still receiving state funds. Jae-young was eventually released, but his father passed away shortly after getting out. And now, 40 years later, the children who survived still live with the scarlet letter of vagrant branded on their foreheads, still fighting for an official apology from their country. If he hadn't been led away by a policeman's hand and forced into that gray van, what kind of life would Jae-young have had? To that question, the state has yet to answer.